The door swung open, and 5 people walked into the office of the most sought-after architect in the country. Dominic Voss entered first. Tailored suit, expensive watch, the practiced confidence of a man who had never been told no. Behind him came his mother Vivienne, his father Gerard leaning on a cane, his brother Julian shifting uncomfortably in his shoes, and trailing at the back, beautiful and brittle, his second wife Nadine. They had come desperate. Their development project was failing. 3 architecture firms had already quit. The City Planning Commission had rejected their proposals twice, and every expert they consulted said the same thing. There was only one architect capable of saving their waterfront tower. One name that kept surfacing in every conversation: Marin Ashford. So they came. They adjusted their schedules. They waited for her availability. They accepted her terms without negotiation. Dominic stepped forward, hand extended, professional smile locked in place. "Miss Ashford, it's an honor. Your opera house is genuinely—" He stopped. The smile collapsed. His hand hung frozen in midair. The blood drained from his face so fast you could practically watch the color leave. Because the woman sitting behind that desk, surrounded by architectural awards and international press clippings, with a gleaming opera house model at her side, was not a stranger. It was his first wife, the one he had abandoned 8 months pregnant, the one whose family had spat at her feet, the one he had left alone in an empty mansion while he flew overseas to marry the woman standing right behind him. Marin did not stand. She did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She simply looked at the man who had destroyed her world and said 5 words that shattered his. "Please, sit down. We have a great deal to discuss." But to understand how this woman ended up holding all the power in a room full of billionaires who once called her worthless, we need to go back. Back to a dark hallway. Back to a whispered phone call. Back to the night Marin Ashford's entire world collapsed and something far more powerful rose from the rubble. Welcome back to Love Chronicles with Mr. Incredible, your home for stories that move, inspire, and remind you of the power that lives within you. Before we begin, I want to speak a blessing over every woman listening to this story right now. May the Almighty wrap His protection around every woman who has ever been underestimated, every woman who has ever been told she wasn't enough, every woman who gave her whole heart to someone who treated it like it was disposable. May you find the strength to remember who you were before the world tried to make you forget. May your hands rebuild what was broken. May your children see you standing tall. And may every person who ever dismissed you live long enough to witness your rise. Now listen to me carefully. What you are about to hear is one of the most powerful stories of transformation I have ever told on this channel. Have you ever given up something precious for someone who didn't deserve it? Have you ever made yourself smaller so someone else could feel big? This woman gave up a career that literally reshaped skylines for a man who couldn't even give her loyalty. Stay until the very end to see what happened when he finally realized who he threw away. And if this story moves you, I need you to hit that like button right now and subscribe to this channel, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Let's begin. Some women remember the end of their marriages by the sound of breaking glass, by a raised voice, by the sharp crack of something irreparable snapping in two. But Marin Ashford would remember the end of hers by a whisper, soft, almost tender, spoken into a phone that was never meant for her ears. It was past midnight, the kind of quiet that settles over a house when everything inside it is pretending to sleep. Marin was 8 months pregnant, swollen and exhausted, her body aching from the weight of carrying life. She had been lying awake in the guest room because Dominic had been sleeping in the study more often lately, claiming late-night conference calls with overseas partners. She told herself she understood. He was busy. He was building something. She convinced herself that the distance between them was temporary, that once the baby arrived, the warmth would return. That night she got up, barefoot on cold tile, her silk robe stretched tight across her belly where their daughter turned restlessly inside her. She walked toward the study, hoping to find him awake. Maybe they could talk about nursery colors, about baby names, about any of the small, sweet things expectant parents were supposed to discuss in the quiet hours before dawn. Instead, she heard his voice through the study door, left carelessly ajar. Low, intimate, conspiratorial, in a tone he hadn't used with her in months. "Everything is finalized, Nadine. My family flew ahead to handle the arrangements, the villa, the ceremony, the guest list. It's all done. Once the baby comes and the dust settles, I file the papers. She won't contest it. She has nothing without me." Marin's blood turned to ice. Her hand flew to the doorframe, gripping it so hard her knuckles blanched white. Her baby kicked violently as if sensing the sudden flood of cortisol through their shared bloodstream. Nadine's voice slithered from the speakerphone. Honeyed, triumphant. And your mother? She's truly on board? Dominic laughed, a sound Marin once loved, now grotesque in its casual cruelty. On board? She orchestrated half of it. She told me marrying Marin was like hanging a cheap print in a gallery of masterpieces. You're the one she always wanted for me. You come from the right world. I just need a few more weeks of performance, he continued. Concerned husband, doting father-to-be. Then I disappear. By the time she figures out what happened, we'll already be married. Marin backed away from the door, one silent step at a time, each movement deliberate despite the roaring in her ears. She made it to the guest bathroom before her legs gave out completely. Sitting on the edge of the bathtub, she pressed both palms against her belly and let the truth wash over her like a tide pulling her under. The man she had built her entire world around was planning to abandon her. Not someday. Not hypothetically. Now, while their daughter grew inside her. While she folded tiny onesies and whispered lullabies to a belly that held the only love she had left. Now, to understand the full weight of what Marin had just heard, you need to understand who she was before she became Dominic Voss's wife. She was Marin Ashford, the youngest principal architect in the history of Hargrove and Lane, the firm that redesigned skylines across 4 countries. She had won the Pritzker nomination at 31, the youngest woman ever shortlisted. Engineering journals called her the woman who makes gravity negotiate. She designed structures that defied physics, bridges that seemed to float, towers that breathed with the wind rather than fought against it. Her buildings didn't just stand, they spoke. And then Dominic Voss walked into her office. He came as a client, a billionaire developer who needed someone brilliant enough to design the centerpiece of his new waterfront complex. He sat across from her drafting table in charcoal cashmere and looked at her blueprints like he was looking at her soul. He pursued her with a ferocity that made her feel chosen in a way she had never experienced. Not with flowers, though there were flowers, but with first editions of architectural books. Weekend flights to cities where her buildings stood so he could stand beside her and say, "You built this. You're extraordinary." She fell for him. God help her. She fell the way buildings collapse when the foundation gives. Completely. Catastrophically. All at once. When he proposed on the rooftop of her own building with the skyline glittering below, she said yes before he finished the question. And when his mother Vivian mentioned over crystal champagne that the Voss wives did not work, that they devoted themselves to family, to legacy, to the domestic architecture of dynasty, Marin had paused. She had hesitated. She had felt something vital tighten like a wire wound too far. But Dominic held her face between his hands and whispered, "You've already proven everything. Now let me take care of you. Let me be enough." So she resigned, walked away from Hargrove and Lane, left her drafting table, her team, her half-finished tower in Milan, her skyline. She folded herself into the shape the Voss family needed her to be. Smaller, softer, less threatening to a dynasty whose wealth was inherited, never earned through the brilliance of their own hands. She never told them who she really was. She introduced herself simply as someone from the design world and let them assume she meant interior decorating. It seemed safer, less complicated. She wanted to be loved for herself, not for her achievements. Instead, they despised her for the emptiness she performed. Now sitting in that bathroom with the truth crushing her chest and her baby turning inside her, Marin understood the architecture of her own destruction. She had designed it herself. Beam by beam, compromise by compromise. She had demolished her own foundation to build a home for a man who was never going to stay. The next morning, Dominic found her tear-stained in the hallway. He barely looked at her. "Why are you crying now?" he asked, adjusting his tie. "Hormones again? Who were you talking to last night?" "Business call, international clients." He was already moving toward the stairs. "I'll be back late. Don't wait up." He was gone before she could respond. The door slamming shut like a period at the end of a sentence she never got to finish. The sound of multiple vehicles pulling into the driveway broke through the silence an hour later. Marin pushed herself up from the chair where she had been sitting motionless and walked to the bedroom window. What she saw made her blood stop moving. Luxury cars, suitcases, the entire Voss family emerging in coordinated formation like soldiers arriving for an operation. Vivian Voss first, immaculate, in ivory wool. Silver hair swept back from a face that had never learned to soften. Behind her, Gerard Voss, Dominic's father, whose expression carried the bored contempt of a man accustomed to disposing of inconveniences. Then Julian and his wife Camille, both wearing the polished blankness of people who had rehearsed their roles. And behind them all, Dominic, changed into a fresh suit, suitcase already in hand. Marin descended the staircase slowly, one hand on the railing, the other cradling her belly. A woman walking to her own sentencing without knowing the charges. The family stood arranged in a semicircle in the living room. Dominic stood apart, his eyes fixed on the floor. Vivian saw her first. There she is, the reason we're all here. Marin stopped at the bottom of the stairs, suddenly aware of her nightgown, her swollen belly, her tear-swollen eyes. What is this? Gerard stepped forward. His face was stone. This is a correction, a long overdue correction. We're taking our son where he belongs, away from you. The words hit Marin like a physical blow. She looked at Dominic desperately, searching his face for denial, for defense, for anything that suggested this was not happening. He would not meet her eyes. Vivian's voice cut through the silence like a blade. You trapped him with that baby. But Nadine is who he really loves. We're taking him to marry a real woman, someone worthy of our family name. Dominic, Marin whispered, and hated how it came out like begging. Tell them this isn't true. He shifted. His jaw tightened. It's complicated, Marin. Complicated? Her voice cracked. I'm 8 months pregnant with your child. Our grandchild, Vivian corrected coldly, who will be provided for financially. But you were never good enough for this family. You brought nothing to this marriage except that belly, and frankly we are done pretending otherwise. Each word landed like a hammer blow against the walls Marin had built around her dignity. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell them that the buildings they admired in their precious cities bore her signature, that she had reshaped skylines while they inherited wealth they never earned. But her throat closed. Pride choked her silent. Gerard announced their flight, the wedding abroad, the timeline, everything already arranged. Dominic moved past her toward the stairs to pack. For one desperate moment, Marin thought he might stop, might look at her, might remember every promise he had ever made. He walked past her without a word. His sleeve brushed her arm. The last physical contact they would ever share as husband and wife. When he returned with his bags, Marin tried one final time. Please don't do this. Quiet, dignified, what remained of her pride preventing her from falling to her knees. Vivian stepped between them. The older woman looked at Marin with something beyond contempt, something ancient and cruel. Then she spat, directly at Marin's feet. You were never one of us, she hissed, and you never will be. The family moved as one toward the door, a coordinated exodus that left Marin standing alone in the wreckage of her life. Dominic paused at the threshold, his back to her. My lawyer will be in touch about the child. Then he was gone. They were all gone. The door slammed shut with the finality of a coffin closing. Marin stood in the sudden silence of the massive house, listening to the vehicles drive away, listening to the echo of everything she had just lost. She stood in a home she had decorated with love, surrounded by furniture she had chosen to make him comfortable, in a life she had built entirely around a man who had just walked out of it without looking back. Now I want to pause right here, because I know some of you are feeling exactly what Marin felt in that moment. That coldness, that disbelief, that crushing silence after someone you loved with your whole heart proves they never loved you back. If you have ever been made to feel like you weren't enough by the very people who should have loved you most, drop a comment below right now. Tell me, I know my worth, because this story is about to show you what happens when a woman finally remembers hers. Hit that like button if you are with me, because what comes next, I promise you, you are not ready. The first contraction hit like lightning. Marin doubled over, gripping the console table in the foyer as pain radiated through her pelvis with savage intensity. Sharp, sudden. Wrong. She was only 8 months. This was not supposed to happen yet. No, she gasped. No, not now. Not like this. But her daughter was already deciding otherwise. Her water broke in a rush that soaked through her nightgown and pooled on the marble floor. The same marble Vivian had selected when she was still pretending to welcome Marin into the family. The second contraction drove Marin to her knees. She fumbled for her phone with hands that would not stop shaking, and dialed emergency services between screams. "Please," she sobbed when the operator answered. "I'm alone. The baby is coming and I am alone. Please help me." She knelt there on the floor of the home she had just been evicted from, feeling her daughter fighting to enter a world that had already proven cruel, and something inside her shifted. Not softness, not surrender, something harder. The paramedics arrived in a blur of sirens cutting through the dawn. They lifted her onto the stretcher while she gripped the rails with white-knuckled hands. "Is there anyone we should call?" the female paramedic asked gently. "Husband? Family?" Marin shook her head violently. The paramedic's expression softened with the quiet understanding of a woman who had seen this before. Women laboring alone, abandoned. The hospital blazed with fluorescent light. They wheeled her through automatic doors and down hallways that smelled of antiseptic and beginnings. A doctor appeared at her side. "Marin, I'm Dr. Vasquez. I know this is terrifying, but you are in good hands. Your baby wants to meet you." The labor was brutal. Each contraction stole her breath and her strength. She pushed until she thought her body would tear itself apart. Nurses held her legs, wiped sweat from her face, murmured encouragement. At some point, she called out for Dominic, a reflex, a broken sob that shamed her even as it left her lips. A nurse leaned close and whispered fiercely, "You don't need him. You are doing this alone and you are incredible." Those words became her anchor. "One more push, Marin." I can see her head. Marin gathered every shred of strength she had left, every ounce of pain and fury and love. She pushed with everything in her. The pain peaked beyond endurance. Then suddenly, beautifully, mercifully, it released. A cry pierced the air, thin and furious and absolutely perfect. "It's a girl," Dr. Vasquez announced, lifting a tiny squirming body into the light. "A beautiful, healthy girl. She's got opinions." They placed her daughter on her chest, warm, slippery, impossibly small. The baby stopped crying the instant she felt her mother's skin. "Hi, baby," Marin whispered, her voice broken and raw. "Hi, my sweet girl. I'm your mama. I'm here. I'm right here." The baby's tiny hand curled against her chest, 5 perfect fingers gripping at the fabric of Marin's hospital gown as though saying, "I found you. I'm not letting go. Have you chosen a name?" A nurse asked later, preparing birth certificate paperwork. Marin looked down at her daughter's sleeping face. Dominic had wanted to name their child after his mother. The thought of connecting this innocent life to that family made her physically ill. "Iris," she said softly. "Her name is Iris Ashford, not Voss, never Voss. This baby belonged to her alone." After the nurse left, Marin sat in the quiet room holding Iris while dawn light filtered through the window. She was a mother now. A single mother with no job, no family support, and a husband who had abandoned her hours before she gave birth. But beneath the fear, something else stirred, something ancient and ferocious that had been sleeping inside her for years. She had survived. She had pushed life into the world with no one holding her hand, no one whispering that she was brave, no one catching her when she fell. And if she could survive that, she could survive anything. "We're going to be okay, baby," she whispered to her sleeping daughter. "Your mama is about to remember who she is, and when she does, this whole world is going to feel it." The knock came on her second day in the hospital. Marin looked up expecting a nurse, and instead found herself staring at Professor Calloway. Silver-bearded, spectacled, carrying the particular rumpled dignity of a man who had spent 40 years teaching structural engineering at the most prestigious university in the country. He had been her thesis advisor, her mentor, the man who looked at her undergraduate bridge designs and said, "You don't think like an engineer, Marin. You think like a poet who happens to understand physics. Marin." His voice cracked on her name. "I saw the admission records. I was visiting a colleague in the maternity ward, and I saw your name on the board. What are you doing here alone?" She could not answer. She just looked at him, this remnant of her former life standing in the doorway like a bridge back to herself.